Hi everyone, welcome to the Bio Edge.
Mangrove forests consist of extreme plants in the sense that mangroves are trees that essentially grow in the sea. And so it's easy to assume that the strange dispersal methods of mangroves are an inevitable result of this extreme ecological situation where a tree is essentially growing in seawater at the coast in an environment where one normally would expect no trees at all, no plants at all, and only algae if any kind of vegetation exists. So what we'd like to point out is that the dispersal modes of mangroves are not that easily explained away, because there are situations, for example, in the flooded forests of the Amazon, where trees grow in water for much of the year and are essentially a forest canopy over deep water during the height of the rainy season. In those situations, the Varzea forests of the Amazon are actually full of plants that have very unmangrove-like dispersal modes. Now, to go back to the marine mangroves, most mangroves consisting of diverse trees from several different families and quite a few genera, they all seem to have something in common in the sense that none of them has a fleshy fruit. And by fleshy fruit, what I mean is the kind of thing that you and I buy at the greengrocers to eat, a plant in which the seeds are wrapped in an edible, palatable, attractive packaging of fruit pulp that is designed by the plant for consumption by an organism that repays the favor in terms of dispersing and sowing the seed. An apple is a perfect example. The apple seeds survive manipulation and treatment by the fruit-eating animal, including the human, and the transaction is essentially that the tree packages its seeds in a food body, the fruit pulp, which has no point, no function other than to be consumed and destroyed, because it's the reward offered to the frugivorous or omnivorous animal that consumes the fruit pulp in return for the service of dispersing and sowing the seed. So that's a very widespread mutualism that plants have with animals. It's called endozoochory. It's the mutualism in which seeds are dispersed and sown through fleshy fruits. And that's the mutualistic syndrome that's so conspicuously lacking in all of the diverse families, genera, and species of mangroves around the world. So our question here at the Bio Edge is, why is it that not even one species of tree among the world's mangroves has adopted what is a perfectly normal, routine method of dispersal and sowing in all of the tropical rainforests of the world? There are countless tree species, thousands of tree species in the tropics, particularly in situations free from fire, that participate in endozoochory and have some form of fleshy fruit. The forms are wonderfully diverse, but they all have this in common, and that is that they have a nutritious, palatable, and edible food body associated with the seeds. And mangroves are chiefly remarkable because they don't have any such syndrome. Now, superficially, it may seem that because mangroves grow in water, the priority is to have floating fruits, cork-like fruits, which is in fact what they do have. But the more you look at this, the less sense it makes, because you could have dispersal and sowing of the seeds by fishes, and that's precisely what you do have in the flooded forests of the Amazon, because many of the Amazon trees do produce fleshy fruits. The fruits are consumed by fishes. The fishes do the same thing that birds do in terrestrial tropical forests, which is they regurgitate or defecate the seeds, and the seeds are then intact and continue to proceed to grow into the trees. So is there an ecological reason why mangroves in general don't have fleshy fruits? Well, here's a possible reason. Fleshy fruit pulp is poor in most nutrients, but the one nutrient that it's predictably and consistently rich in is potassium. And potassium is a problem in seawater. It's not a problem in the Amazon, but it is a problem in seawater, and that's precisely because potassium tends to have an antagonistic relationship with sodium, which is the overwhelming cation in seawater. And because mangroves tend to be poisoned, as it were, with sodium, the availability of potassium, the affordability of potassium for fleshy fruits among mangroves is severely compromised. And an added factor is that potassium is different from other nutrients in the sense that it has to be taken up actively by roots. It doesn't diffuse passively into roots, despite the fact that it's such a mobile and abundant nutrient in most ecosystems. And so roots actually have to metabolize and respire in order to get the energy to drag potassium into themselves from the surrounding environment. And because mangroves have anoxic, anaerobic conditions in the organic muds of the mangrove ecosystem, the roots are generally unable to afford the costs of absorbing potassium, particularly in a sodic environment where potassium is antagonized by the predominant sodium in seawater. And so we're offering an ecological reason why all the mangroves in the world have failed to produce fleshy fruits. Not only do the mangroves have an incentive to have flotational fruits, but they battle to afford the potassium that is intrinsic in the construction of fleshy fruits. And as a parting thought, if anyone thinks that the agendas of flotation and endozoochory are mutually exclusive, well, just think of bobbing for apples. The apple is a perfect example of a fruit that doubles. It is perfectly palatable and edible and attractive to fruit-eating animals, but it happens also to be a flotational fruit. As you know, an apple will float. And so you can have fruits, theoretically, that both float and attract seed-dispersing animals. And so the puzzle of the mangroves is compounded by that. Why don't mangroves why don't they have their cake and eat it, in the sense of having fruits that both float and get consumed by birds on the one hand and fishes on the other? And so why don't mangroves participate in endozoochory? Well, we've offered a physiological reason, and we'd love to hear any other ideas that are out there from our listeners.